things first. I'm Jenna Wolf. That's the Hall of Famer Chris Carter. This is Nick Wright.
You are funny. Cece's straight-laced all morning, relatively reserved. And 3 seconds after we start hearing the music in our ear, makes fun of Jenna, gives me a funny eye look. The whole nine. Good to see you this morning, C.
It's good. You know our strengths, you know our weaknesses, and you play both up and down to both of them at the exact same time. Thank you so much, Chris Carter. Much appreciated.
Trying to give you a little confidence, Jenna, before you head out there.
You look terrible. I hate that dress. Welcome to the show. It's going to be the best 3 hours ever. How was your weekend?
It was
good
great.
Weekend?
It was great. Wife was out of town, so I got to spend time with my kids and watch a lot of basketball.
Okay.
So aside from the wife being gone, it was great.
In that order.
Weekend.
And you, sir?
That means the kids watched a lot of basketball.
Right.
Ordered a lot of takeout.
Oh, every night,
Uber
man.
Eats.
Every night. I don't even know if the fridge opened.
Oh, that's
lot of delivery, though.
so
it
healthy.
happens. Yeah.
Speaking of kids watching basketball, I know Nick's adorable 4-year-old Deanna already knows about LeBron James and how GOAT he is. But when my 4-year-old walks into the room after hearing us screaming watching the game and asks if LeBron did something great, you know LeBron did something great, because over the weekend, LeBron did something great. Game 3, Cavs-Raptors, that's where we're starting this morning. LeBron James had 38 points, including a fadeaway, falling away, off balance, oh my goodness, buzzer-beating jumper for the win to put Cleveland up a very, very commanding 3-0 over the Toronto Raptors. Let's hear from LeBron James after that game.
The level of difficulty of that shot, it is very difficult. Don't try it at home. I live for those moments. I think I was just, I don't know. I was, like I told y'all in the Indiana series, that mental clock of being a kid and just kind of just telling myself 3, 2, 1, and making the noise of the net, that sound. I've been doing that since I was like 6, 7, 8 years old, maybe even before that. It's a picture floating around of me besides a little Tykes hoop with a saggy pamper on. And I probably was doing it back then, all the way up until now, being 33. So, it's not things that you dream about, that you get those opportunities. And I've been fortunate enough to just get a handful of those in some of the biggest moments, in my career.
This was LeBron James' 5th career postseason buzzer beater, the second of these playoffs. It seemed like we went a long stretch without seeing any, and now all of a sudden we go games where we see so many. How much of this series has changed your opinion, Cece, of how good this Cavaliers team is, just in the last couple weeks?
Well, I had to change my opinion. I didn't think they would make it to the finals, to the NBA Finals. I thought Philadelphia, when they were all jockeying for position when they started the playoffs, I thought Philadelphia was going to be better than them. I thought this was going to be the year that Cleveland, not because LeBron James, but because of the supporting cast, the lack of continuity, the lack of court time this team has spent, the abbreviated seasons that they've had, 4 different ones. They had 3 different ones during the season, but they had no training camp. But that 7-game series against the Pacers has galvanized this roster where they are playing, I would say, the best pressure-packed basketball, because they played a great month to 45 days of basketball where they had a tremendous record. I think they won 19 of 21.
Yep.
And so you can say, yes, they did play, but in doing that, could they beat the quality teams out there? And I think that in looking at Toronto, and Nick, you pointed out this weekend when you and I were talking, was they're the second-best team. They got the second-best record in the NBA this year, even a better record than Golden State. Now, that's very impressive. We know Houston has the best record, but to say a team, because any team that had a better record than Golden State, you would give them a certain amount of respect for what they're doing. But Kevin Love finding his game, the lineup changes that they've gone to, they have made me change my opinion that, yes, the Cavs can get to the finals. Yes, and seeing what's going on in the other bracket where Boston is ahead of Philadelphia 3-0. Yes, I've changed my opinion. It's based on what I've seen, and the Cavs have earned. They've made me. They've made me change my opinion.
This probably isn't a shock to people who watch the show. My opinion hasn't changed because I had either what's called faith or what some folks have called blind faith that this is what the team would look like around this time of year. I did not expect them to struggle as much with Indy as they did, but even after struggling with Indy, I did not think Toronto could match up with them at all. At the beginning of the year, the midway point of the year, and headed into the postseason, if you ask me, what do I think about the Cavs? I would have said they will make the NBA Finals and be a heavy underdog against either Houston or Golden State. Right now, sitting here today, they will make the NBA Finals and be either a heavy underdog against either Golden State or Houston. But what I didn't see coming was all of a sudden this team gelling the way it has. And it's really, when I say all of a sudden, it is just 3 games. Because they didn't gel at any point in the Pacers series. We were excited about a 3-minute stretch of basketball at the start of the 4th quarter of Game 7.
Right, but you were excited because you said that the Pacers, the way they play, that they beat the Cavs 3 out of 4 during the regular season. They match up well with them. It's one of those kind of things. It's maybe not necessarily on paper, but they give the Cavs problems. And you said the way the bracket is coming out, Toronto was going to be a godsend for the Cavs in the semifinals.
Even though they won 59 games, and I'm not one of the people calling them the baby dinosaurs. I'm not saying Toronto's a bad team, a fraud of a team. I don't believe any of those things. And while they had the 2nd best record, I wouldn't call them the 2nd best team, and neither would you. But I would have called them the 3rd best team this year. They were the 3rd best team all year long. Houston, Golden State, and then Toronto. But what this series also is going to do is give the Cavs, and most importantly LeBron, rest. They are going to have a week off, nearly a week off, going into the next round. Now, the Celtics might as well, but it's more important for Cleveland.
Sure.
LeBron playing now, he's played 92 games, or 91 games, pardon me, 42 minutes a game in the postseason. And the one thing that was overlooked and underrated in the Pacers series was not having George Hill for 3.5 games.
Yes.
Now that they have an actual point guard, Jordan Clarkson barely has to play. Calderon doesn't play at all. They don't have to lean on Rodney Hood for any type of shot making. Now what you're seeing is the 5 guys who were on the finals last year, plus Jeff Green, plus George Hill, and you have a 7-man rotation that you believe in.
2 things. One, why do I always bet against you and then kick myself the next morning? But more importantly, and one that we can actually discuss on the show, why do you think, after what you saw and how you saw the Cavs play the Pacers and how the Pacers took them all the way, I mean, like, just ripped them to the core. They were exhausted after that series and barely won. Did you think they were going to be a great matchup for Toronto? Did you think they'd have no problem with Toronto? You said they wouldn't lose another game, basically,
until the Eastern Conference Finals. Some of it's matchups. Some of it, the Pacers have more bodies to throw at you. Another is that the Pacers had every reason to change what they did in the regular season. We're going to pick LeBron up 90 feet. We're going to do drastic measures.
But the Raptors wouldn't?
No, because when you're the favorite, when you have home court, when you won 59 games, I think their mindset was, we're going to do what we do. We're going to play Raptors basketball, and LeBron wouldn't allow it to work.
To me, the only difference between what's going on now, Kevin Love and the role players playing better, but the Pacers had a finisher in Victor Oladipo. He was a finisher, and the Raptors don't have a finisher. If the Raptors had a finisher, it could be 2-1. It could be 1-2. Like, let's not forget what happened in game number 1. Let's not forget LeBron just had another buzzer beater. But that was without Toronto's star, not playing the last 14 minutes. So if Toronto had a better closing method or a better closer, the way Cleveland does, but I still have more confidence. So this is not a series that all of a sudden, once it started, Cleveland started playing like they were 2 years ago. No, this has been a highly contested series. The game number 2 got away from them, and that I believe was Cleveland's best basketball that they played this postseason.
And it looked like they were following that up in game 3 until the 4th quarter.
Yes.
When Cleveland, here's an underrated thing about Cleveland.
7 quarters, Cleveland played spectacular basketball.
Absolutely. But here's an underrated thing about Cleveland that I haven't heard anyone mention. They are an NBA all-time record, 43-1 when leading after 3 quarters. This is a team that has been the best if they have a lead, they've been the best finishing team we've ever seen. You then add to it this new layer that LeBron has added, which is there any player in the league you'd rather have with the ball in his hands at the end of a game? We've gone from doubting LeBron in clutch situations to, with 8 seconds left, when Onuabi, hit that 3, Did anyone think LeBron wasn't going to get a good look or wasn't going to make the shot? So the teams had confidence as a whole. If we're leading after 3, we can win. Like a team with a great closer in baseball. Lead after 7, the game's over. Instead of man and closer. And then you have LeBron, who at the end of games is playing better than he's ever played. And you have a team that right now, everyone knows their role. Everyone knows what they're supposed to do. You have a top 2, I'm being kind, all-time player playing at the peak of his powers. And what you have is a team that is rolling through a 59-win, fully healthy Raptors team.
And most importantly, if they can close it out tonight, they do have more time to actually rest. So 143-year-old LeBron James can rest his body. We have Carlos Boozer joining us a little bit later. We're going to talk about much more about this and that clutch shot by LeBron. But coming up, let's talk some football. Why is Ben Roethlisberger taking shots at his new teammate? The guy barely has been fitted for a uniform. That's next on First Things First.
This time of year brings us 2 things, graduations and Father's Day, and the gifts that go along with them. Before you buy Dad another tie or that grad balloon that's just going to float away, ask yourself this: does my dad or my grad like wings or sports, or better yet, both? If the answer is yes, then get them a Buffalo Wild Wings gift card. Right now, if you purchase $30 worth or more in store or online, they give you a $5 bonus to keep for yourself. That's a gift that gives back. How generous of you. Buffalo Wild Wings. Wings, beer, sports. Terms and conditions apply.
All right, let's move on to the Pittsburgh Steelers. You know, guys, you'd think if you're a franchise quarterback with tons of money, a nice car, no threat to your position, and a glorified place in your team's history, you wouldn't care so much if your team drafted a future quarterback. Keyword there being future. But when the Steelers drafted Mason Rudolph in the 3rd round, Big Ben was big unhappy. Last week he said if Rudolph's the guy, he won't be for a while. Turns out he wasn't a fan of the Steelers drafting a quarterback at all.
I was surprised when they took a quarterback because I thought that maybe in the 3rd round, you know, you can get some really good football players that can help this team now. And nothing against Mason. I think he's a great football player. I don't know him personally, but I'm sure he's a great kid. I just don't know how, backing up or being the 3rd round, who knows where he's going to fall in the depth chart, but helps us win now. But, that's not my decision to make. That's on the coaches and the GM and owner and those kind of things. So if they feel like he can help our team, so be it. But I was a little surprised.
Will you feel any extra or added responsibility to take him under your wing? Do you think you'll have to do that?
Well, I don't think I'll need to now. He said that he doesn't need me. So if he asks me a question, I might have to just point to the playbook,
If I was Ben, I'd probably say the same thing. He's a competitor. Obviously he's a lot of confidence in himself like I do. And, yeah, he's going to be a future Hall of Famer, and I would expect him to say that.
There's a little, passive aggressiveness going on there.
I'm not sure how passive it is.
There's a little aggressiveness going on there from Big Ben. When you say to someone, no offense, but I'm going to offend you in 16 different ways, it's the same way of Ben Roethlisberger saying, nothing against Mason, but let me tell you the following 5 reasons why I'm not going to be tutoring, mentoring, or spending any time making this guy better. CeCe, does Roethlisberger have a point about the Steelers drafting Mason Rudolph?
No, he doesn't have a point because he doesn't have any say in it. It's one discussion we've had earlier about Aaron Rodgers or other players. Should they have input on what you're going to do as a front office? And this is another glaring example of why they shouldn't know. Ben doesn't know what prospects the Steelers need. Actually, the Steelers had a quarterback when they drafted Ben. I wonder, did he still think the same? Tommy Mack, they had a starting quarterback who they drafted Ben to replace him. And every other starting quarterback, even the greatest of them all, Terry Bradshaw, they drafted someone to take his spot. It's called the National Football League. It's called the process of becoming a player. And the Pittsburgh Steelers, as an organization, how many Super Bowls they won?
They won 5? 6? 6 Super Bowls.
Has anybody won more?
What? No.
Okay. I think they're doing a pretty good job at selecting players because they don't participate in free agency the way other teams have done through the years. They've been very consistent and patient with their coaches.
Smart with which players they decide to extend and not. If you remember, they had Mike Wallace, Antonio Brown. People didn't know who they were going to keep. They got rid of Mike. They gave Antonio his first big contract. They've been savvy on all those moves.
The Pittsburgh Steelers have done a good job. But for those who don't follow the NFL, this is who Ben Roethlisberger is. He's always been very, very petty. He's always been about getting attention himself. Even his injuries, people would say that, yes, he's durable, but he's also milked some of those injuries as far as how long he was going to be out, the extent of those injuries, sharing that information with other people, not even going to get into his decision-making off the field, which has been questioned a couple times in his career. This is who Ben is. What was he doing the last couple years? Questioning Todd Haley as an offensive coordinator. Now he's questioning Kevin Colbert, the general manager. During the season, you know what he questioned? Mike Tomlin as a head coach, the leadership. Remember, he questioned some of the things that he did. This is what Ben has done, and I believe this to be one of the problems with Pittsburgh and why this group does not collectively have rings. There's always some bickering. There's always some little player saying something. In last year's draft, Martavis Bryant, he sounded off. I don't know why they drafted him. Juju Schuster, who was a star. I guess the general manager didn't know who he was drafting in Juju Schuster. So that's another reason why the players should never have an impact on who the organization is going to draft.
And Ben went on. I mean, there were more inflammatory quotes than we had time to play, but also when he was talking about questioning the draft. Later in the interview, he's like, they must have missed on the Josh Dobbs pick. They draft him. If they're drafting Mason in the 3rd round this year, Josh Dobbs must not be the player that they thought he was. As far as to answer the question, I understand why Big Ben would feel like, man, I'm trying to win Super Bowls. I'm trying to have the team be better this year. I'd rather have another weapon or another offensive lineman. I get why you would feel that way. And maybe it's better to keep that part to yourself. But if you want to communicate that, I wouldn't kill him for it. But that second part, which is totally unfair to this rookie, where he's asked if he'd mentor him, if he'd help him. And he said, well, he said he doesn't need me. So I'll just point to the playbook. That is not what Mason Rudolph said. Mason Rudolph said exactly what you would want a rookie to say. My job is to come in and learn. My job is to come in and work. It is not Ben's job to help me. He said that before and after. So for Ben to take that quote and paint the rookie in a bad light, when Ben, no matter what, in the national media, people think of Ben Roethlisberger. In Pittsburgh, he's a god. So to immediately taint the wells, so to speak, on Mason Rudolph with that fan base is wildly unfair and totally unnecessary.
And let's not forget, Ben also not threatened, but basically said he didn't want to play anymore after the Jacksonville game. He was questioning whether he was going to come back.
The season before that, he questioned how long he was going to play.
So the Steelers hear that. The Steelers know there's a little guy in his mind saying, maybe this is it. Why wouldn't they want to just have someone there? Regardless, it's still their decision. They still understand what the future holds. They still understand how old he is and what they have left. They can do whatever they want. I fully agree with you.
Yeah, Ben Roethlisberger shouldn't have any input. And this just reveals just who he is. This is who Ben is. Ben was supposed to be happy because Todd Haley, they let him go, relieved him of his offensive coordinator's duty. But no, now they've drafted another player, and it is Ben's responsibility to be able to teach this guy, regardless of what Ben thinks.
And it's not like they reached on this player. Like, this was a guy people said potentially could be taken in the 1st round if Lamar Jackson wasn't. Most draft boards had him as a 2nd rounder. They got him mid or, I guess, early 3rd round when you have a quarterback who is going into year 15. All of that makes sense. And to throw one of your teammates under the bus is the part of this that's unconscionable.
When he's been your teammate for like 6 minutes.
Yeah, it's just totally unnecessary. And CeCe's point about it revealing who this player actually is, I think is a prescient one.
All right, let's take a break. Coming up, how have the Boston Celtics been able to just dominate the 76ers? Break that down next. First things first. All right, on to the Warriors, who looked golden yesterday. They beat the Pelicans by 26 points to take a commanding 3-1 series lead. Kevin Durant was in the zone, dropping 38 points. His teammate, Andre Iguodala, he was next to the zone. He said KD kind of reminded him of MJ in this one. CeCe, what impressed you most about Durant's performance yesterday?
Oh, he can get any shot he wanted on the court. How patient he was once he got the ball. He wasn't in a rush. They weren't going to double team him. But he wasn't shooting a lot of threes. Man, so many mid-range jumpers just went right over top of Drew Holiday, went right over top of the brow. Man, there was no answer for him. No. He looked like the most dangerous offensive player in the NBA yesterday.
Listen, for Game 5, the Pelicans, I know it's a lot to ask of your guy because you need him to go for 35 points. Anthony Davis has to guard him. Like, the Drew Holiday guarding him experiment has to end. And each one more guarding him has to end. You have to get someone that can put a hand in his face. How many shots last night was it theoretically a good contest? Like, the guy was right there, but It was a clear, easy practice shot for KD because he's so much bigger. KD, and by the way, good job by him going away from the threes. He was shooting less than 25% in the playoffs from three. Just killed him with mid-range games all night. He was outstanding yesterday.
All right, the Raptors lost on Saturday to fall behind 0-3 to the Cavs. Kyle Lowry played well, but their other star, guard DeMar DeRozan, boy, he had one of the worst games of the season. DeRozan was benched, didn't play at all in the fourth quarter. Here's what he had to say after the game.
Extremely hard, extremely hard. I never want to be over there, watch, especially the competitor I am. Just want to be out there, help my team win more than anything, so it definitely sucks to be watching. But like I said, we got to give credit to them guys. We fought hard, gave ourselves the chance to win. Just, hoping we win, winning cures everything. That's the only thing that goes across my mind. As long as we win, it cures anything. A bad night, individually, everything. So I was just hoping for them guys to pull it out and win.
To say they've got an uphill battle would be quite the understatement. What do you make of DeMar DeRozan being benched in the fourth inning?
It's a really tough situation because I don't think it was Dwayne Casey's plan to bench him. He took him out at the end of the third quarter, as he customarily does. Yeah. He started the fourth quarter on the bench, as he customarily does. Yeah. And they got back in the game. They had their best quarter of the series.
I wouldn't say that he was actually benched. He just changed the rotation. Because when you're benched, you're actually playing bad. The coach sees that you're playing bad and takes you out of the game. He came out in his normal rotation. They stormed back. I thought the coach made the right move. Now, he made a couple other moves that I will question, but as far as leaving the backups in there, because they did bring the team back, their biggest problem was not those 14 minutes. Their biggest problem was they didn't get that last stop. Because if they get that last stop, they can bring DeMar back in the overtime. He's got 5 minutes. He got a clean slate. Then he's got a chance to redeem himself. But they don't get the final stop. So now the totality of it hits them. They're down 3-0. The player who they've invested in, believed in, he's going to be the guy to help us turn around. He was on the bench, so it just doesn't look. It does not look good for the Raptors or DeMar.
Listen, Dwayne Casey can be criticized for a lot of things in this basketball game. I'm not laying the blame on him for this. The blame's on the player. I like DeMar DeRozan. I've been saying all year that I think he's a fringe All-NBA guy. He would have had a spot on my ballot. He was one of the 6 best guards in the NBA this year. But this is your biggest game of the season. This is a game that you guys have to have. And he's minus 23 in 27 minutes on the court. Minus 23. He's 3 for 12. People, if they just look at the box score, they would think J.R. Smith played a really bad game because he had 0 points. J.R. was extraordinary on DeMar DeRozan defensively. J.R. is not Kawhi Leonard. You can't let J.R. Smith shut you down. And you can't, in your biggest game of the season, the only way your season stays alive, play as poorly as he did. He kind of bound Dwayne Casey's hands when the team ended up playing well in the fourth quarter without him, and his best friend and backcourt mate, Kyle Lowry, was doing everything for him.
So do you agree?
And Cleveland was giving Lowry more space. That was their game plan, to give him more space and let him shoot.
You're okay with him on the bench, with Dwayne Casey keeping him on the bench?
Listen,
he had to.
They were, again, I think CeCe's point's correct. It wasn't the plan. The plan was your normal rotation. Out for the final 2 minutes of the third, first 2 minutes of the fourth, play the last 10. But the Raptors were playing so well, I'm sure he was waiting for them to hit a lull to put it back in. They never hit a lull. They tied the game up. And I do think he would have started overtime. People were speculating, would he have left him on the bench to start overtime? I say no chance. He would have let him start overtime.
All right, let's get to the other series in the Eastern Conference, Sixers and Celtics. If I told you one of those two teams would be up 3-0, Sixers dominant, confident, Celtics depleted, injured, who would you have picked? Certainly not the Celtics, said everyone but Brad Stevens. But after Game 3 Saturday night, Boston is now on the verge of sweeping the once red-hot 76ers. The members of the Boston Celtics were united in praise for their coach after the game.
Brad is a genius, man. Unbelievable. Sometimes he draws stuff up and I look at him like, I didn't think, but Marcus delivered it. Great pass. I missed some shots that I normally make there, but I made that one, so it's good.
It sucked to lose this way. I felt like we had control of the whole game, especially when we made that one at the end of the first half. We felt really good, but we made a couple mistakes at the end, and that and it wasn't good on our part.
All right, Cece, there's so many things you can point to here, but let's start with coming at it from the Celtics angle because they're the ones up 3-0. How have they been able to do this going up against a healthy, strong, confident, or once confident Sixers team?
Brad Stevens and the coaching staff have this team playing amazing. They're shooting the basketball. They get into different sets that the players are comfortable with, making big shots. I mean, they're young players playing spectacular. Jaylen Brown coming back in, giving them a lift, even with a bad hamstring. But they have a superstar in Tatum. Tatum has lifted his game where he's for a rookie. Look at all the rookies in the playoffs. Look at where they are in the second round. We were talking about, man, this is odd. We got all these rookies playing well. Round number 1, we get to the semifinals. We don't have so many rookies playing well.
Right.
We actually have one rookie that's playing well, and that's Jason Tatum. He's probably one of the biggest reasons, him, Terry Rozier, why the Celtics are playing this amazing, besides Brad Stevens showing the world that he's a great basketball coach.
Listen, I'm glad you brought up Brad Stevens because I usually bring up Brad Stevens. I'm going to talk about the players. Jenna, let me ask you a question. Your guy, Danny Ainge, what's the free agent acquisition he's been most criticized for?
Al Horford, probably.
Al Horford.
Well, could they gave Al max contract a couple years ago? No one thought he'd be playing this well right now. And he's not. He's not putting up monster numbers. But he has owned Joel Embiid.
Exactly right. And I mean, the only thing, he is playing that well. He's just statistically not playing amazing. But what he is doing defensively on Embiid and the way he's dominating Embiid on the other end, Horford in this series is a plus 47 when playing the 5. His ability to not only do that with his own scoring, but to remove Embiid from under the basket. Embiid's got to guard him out near the three-point line, which removes some of his Defensive Player of the Year capability. He's been extraordinary. You add to it Jason Tatum. I mean, this is remarkable. Like, Jason Tatum's going to come in third in Rookie of the Year and going to be the best player on a conference finalist. What he has done, breaking Larry Bird's record for 5 straight games with 20-plus points in the playoffs as a rookie. And the one other thing Boston has going for it that is an underrated thing in the playoffs is they have zero what people in NBA circles call lame ducks. And Philly's got a bunch of them. Guys that if they get the ball, if they don't have an open shot, there's nothing they can do to you. Right? Philly's got J.J. Redick's a guy who I think is an excellent player, so it sounds more derogatory than it is. But if J.J.'s not getting the shot, he's not hurting you in any other way. Every guy Boston puts out there can either hurt you with the shot or will at least take the shot, can beat you off the dribble, or can find an open man through passes. Like, all of them are triple threats. They have no lame ducks on the court, which make them so hard to defend.
They're a great defensive team. I mean, we saw in the playoffs teams step it up through energy, but Boston through the season, you would argue, are they the best defensive team in the NBA? You could argue that. In the playoffs, to me, they're the best defensive team left of the playoff teams.
And also, what did we talk about with the Sixers? That if there was going to be any thorn for them, it was going to be the fact that they're a little bit younger, they don't have playoff experience, and that was going to bite them. Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, this isn't an old veteran Celtics team, and somehow they came out and sort of debunked the whole playoff experience thing, came at the 76ers strong, defended well, and they're up 3-0.
The Celtics are a younger team on average than Philadelphia. Where the Celtics have the edge, and this isn't a knock on Brett Brown, is the coaching out of timeouts.
It is a knock on the coach, though. Anytime you can say that the coaching is better, it's got to be a knock on it, because there's only 8 teams left playing. All right? When you start looking at the tail of the tape and you can say, wow, they have a decisive edge in coaching, it has to be a knock on the coach.
Unless you think the guy on the other side is the best coach in the league, and they'd have a decisive edge on almost every team in the league, which is what I think about Brad Stevens, pardon me. But the other part of it is that he is asking guys to do what they do best and not asking them to do anything else. It's why this team has been almost interchangeable with the pieces they can put out there. And one other thing that was a Philly bugaboo all year long and where Boston was extraordinary all year long, the late game execution. Philly was a terrible fourth quarter team throughout the regular season. In the first round against Miami, they were awesome at it. It's come back again in this series. And Boston just won a road playoff game. first road playoff game they've won all series en route to probably winning in 5 games.
Yeah, Brett Brown has played a role in all 3 games the team has lost. You can look at them and be like, you can blame it on the player, Ben Simmons disappearing, but also the coach has been a detriment in all 3 losses to Boston.
All right, we'll take a break. We'll talk a lot more about this coming up. But on the other side, why doesn't anyone want to sign Dez Bryant? It's next on First Things First. Welcome back to First Things First. We're now joined by Super Bowl champ Greg Jennings. It's been a while. Hey, Greg.
Jennings, how are you?
It actually hasn't
Has
been
not
that
been that long. You were just here. That's awesome. It's great to see you again. It's been like 5 minutes. You went, you golfed, you came back, and now you're back.
Absolutely.
Good to see you, Greg.
I'm nothing if not aware of everything that's happening.
It has been a while. You're right. Let's just roll with that.
Oh, I was like, wait, hold on. I feel like I just said that. Greg, we've been talking about Dez Bryant forever. So let us continue on with the Dez Bryant watch. Here's how it works. We say Dez Bryant, and you tell us why teams haven't signed him yet. Pretty simple. Rules, but not so simple answers. Dez still unemployed after being released from the Dallas Cowboys a few weeks ago. It was reported last week that some teams, quote, won't even bring in Dez for the minimum, something his former teammate Cole Beasley isn't putting a lot of stock into.
I've seen the things going around that teams won't even sign him for minimum. I'm like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Dez was always a great teammate to me, and he did want to see other guys succeed. I mean, every wide receiver wants the rock, and, you know, he's so passionate, it may come off the wrong way to some people. Now Dez, he has a chip on his shoulder, and that's something, I mean, he's already an animal already, and now, like, I've actually seen him working more than I've ever seen him work. Like, it's scary. Like, if he gets to another team and he gets that shot, I promise you he's going to be ready.
It's quite a different, quite a different sentiment than what we're hearing from other teams around the league. Do you think a contending team, Greg, should take a chance on Dez Bryant?
I do. Let me say this. I've been critical of Dez and his performance and his play on the field. As a teammate, I don't question that he's a bad teammate. I think he's a great teammate. I've heard nothing but great things. When the guy is that passionate about what they're trying to get done and what they're trying to accomplish, you can't just be a bad teammate. But here's the thing. When you're a team and you're owner, your head coach, your general manager, you have to survey everything. You have to look at your head coach. Is that position stable? Your offensive coordinator, is he stable and secure? Your quarterback, is he an older guy who's secure in who he is, who's not going to waver, who's not going to let the passion that Dez Bryant shows on the sideline impact and influence the way they perform on the field? That's the question, and that's the concern. That's probably, in my opinion, why teams are a little withdrew when it comes to signing a Dez Bryant. And one thing that Cole Beasley said that really stood out to me was he's worked harder than he's ever worked. He's putting in
That's not a compliment.
It's not. It's not. Right. At this stage in your career, you should be the example. You should have always been the example of work ethic and how to work and how to develop your craft. And that's what I don't think Dez has taken serious up until this point, now that he's on the outside looking in.
Do you think he'd be a fit in Green Bay?
Yes and no. Here's my thing about Green Bay. I've heard you say Green Bay a couple times.
And they were one of the teams initially linked to him via the rumors right when he was released.
My thing with Green Bay, from what I've always known about McCarthy and Aaron Rodgers, they like route runners, guys who can create separation, even though it's not needed when you have an accurate guy like Aaron Rodgers. But the ability to run routes, to be specific and complementary of your other guys running their routes is mandatory in that offense. And that's what I don't like. What I do like is he will have an opportunity to make plays because Aaron Rodgers will throw him open.
It feels like a Tony Romo similarity on some of the things Tony was good
for
at.
Sure.
Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, well, Cole Beasley, he said a couple things were alarming. One was the work ethic. The other thing was he said, I picked up on it, he said he was a good teammate to me. Well, why was it so specific to you? It was 53 guys on the roster. Why wouldn't he be just a great teammate? Why specifically was it just to you? Now, he said, now every wide receiver wants the rock. Well, yes. Every wide receiver, too, that I know, and I believe this is going to be Dez's problem, they think they're better than what they really are. Myself included, every other wide receiver.
Especially at this stage.
At all stages, they always think they're better, let alone at the back end where they're trying to get paid. They all do. Like, it was a realization. A coach told me that. Every wide receiver, Chris, thinks they're better than what they are. I said, yeah, you're right, coach. So I'm going to have to be really good because I think that I'm a hell of a lot even better than that. So that's a fact. But when you are an aging veteran and you can't be a volume shooter anymore and your whole mantra is energy, where do you add that to? I mean, where does that play well? You look at Dez on the sideline, you tell me where that plays well. With another head coach, another fan base, another locker room, you tell me where that plays well. So for me, Dez, he needs a dose of reality. He is not a star anymore. He is a role player, and he can't play and be demonstrative the way he was before. And I don't believe that Dez, going through this, has looked at it the right way and been like, you know something, I need to change because he's not a better route runner. I don't care how much he gets in the gym. It's not going to make him explosive going to the ball. His hands sometimes are still suspect. We saw that last year. He's not a smart player. Carries the ball always in his left arm. So there are things at this point in his career that I don't want to add that to a veteran, to a contending team, because I'm worried I'm not going to be able to get him the ball enough.
Des, Greg, as the days go by and he remains unsigned and more of this comes out where teams see tape on him, they decide they don't want him, where teams all of a sudden come out and say, we wouldn't want to give him the minimum contract. Are you concerned at all that there's a chance he may go till the very end and only be plucked by a team who needs someone because of an injury? Is there a chance he doesn't get signed?
There's always that chance. But Dez has to be willing to, your point, he has to be willing to look at it himself in the mirror and say,
I'm just going to be a role player.
This may be my future. The one thing, for me, when I look at Dez and his situation, I was in a similar situation not a similar situation, let me not say that, but when I went to Miami, I was 32 years old when I got down there. They looked at me as a player coach. Yes. Having something to provide in the locker room as a player, but more so for the young guys, the Jarvis Landrys, the guys that had passion, that you knew this is our future. You're not really our future, but you're a key component to what we're trying to get done. Exactly, because of what I knew about the game and how I carried myself and what I could offer the young guys.
And I hope you don't find this disrespectful to your skill, but at that point in time, where you were as a player alone, if you were considered a questionable locker room guy or a bad locker room guy, they would not have signed you.
What's the need?
Right. It was you were there. If Greg goes out and has 800 yards receiving, that's awesome. But you were there, like you said, because they had spent high draft picks and commodities on young receivers. They want to teach them how to be a pro, how to run routes, how to do the things that. So it was like a wide receivers coach / player. Like that's the opposite of what people aren't going to ask Dez to teach someone how to be a pro. Certainly they're going to ask him how to teach you how to run routes. It would be about production. So I want to do a similar thing that I did with you, CC. When you talk about a contending team, I'm going to bring up one very specific contending team. What about Jacksonville? Jacksonville that has a lot of fiery personalities, primarily on the defensive side of the ball. They lost both their top two receivers. Well, I know one was injured, but they lost Allen Robinson and Allen Hurns this offseason, and they have a limited quarterback. If you were Jacksonville, would you be interested in Dez?
Jacksonville's a running team just like Dallas. If he's able to adopt the same philosophy, knowing that I'm with a young quarterback, that I don't know if Blake Bortles is going to get better with someone like Dez Bryant, someone who's not predictable. I need to know on a 5-step drop, you got a pro out, you're going to put that foot in the top of the ground, and I can release it.
I'm going to be there.
I don't want to be – because I only got so many reps. When you're on a team like that, you only got 25 throws a game. The defense, we know their mentality. Miles Jack sat here and said, hey, man, if they get 3 points, that's enough for us. So I'm just concerned about that and how that plays back to a quarterback who we saw last year during the season. He lost his confidence.
All right, so that's no Packers and no Jaguars. We're going to get to all of them. Then we will find a team. Greg, we'll see you a little bit later on in the show. Coming up, are the Golden State Warriors unstoppable with their new starting lineup? That's next on First Things First. Welcome back to First Things First. We're now joined by former NBA All-Star Carlos Boozer. Thanks for joining us, Carlos.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.
It has been a very unpredictable NBA playoffs, would you say?
Absolutely.
Except for Nick Wright. I don't think any of us had anyone who we thought was going to be doing anything.
I mean, the East has been unpredictable for many people.
Yes.
The West is probably playing the way people thought it would thus far.
All right, so then let's talk about the West. Carlos, you know who appears to be having a good time in the playoffs thus far? The Warriors. They lost Game 3 on Friday night to the Pelicans, and it was adorable. Because on Sunday for Game 4, it was as if they were like, fine, we'll just do this, no problem. They started their death lineup, 4 All-Stars plus Andre Iguodala. KD had 38 points, and the Warriors dominated the Pelicans to take a 3-1 series lead. Carlos, what's the best way to defend the Warriors' death lineup, if you will?
Whew, if you got that answer, they're going to give you a lot of money.
I want a lot of money, actually.
No, they're incredible, man. You think about what KD's able to do at his size, shoot from outside, shoot from the inside, get a rebound, dribble up, make a play for each other. But last night, 38 points, mid-range game was popping from everywhere, creating that space. I do think the size difference makes a huge difference. He's 7 feet, shooting jump shots like a 2-guard, makes him unguardable. Then you add the rest of his friends, Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green getting a triple-double, Iguodala. And then on top of that, defensively, they can switch anything on defense, and they got the length to do so.
And defensively, usually if you were starting a lineup that size, unless KD was going to be, as he was at the beginning of the season, peak rim defender, you would be at a deficit. But what we've seen these playoffs is the Draymond Green that I once upon a time called the most important player on this team. Back before they had KD, when Steph was the unanimous MVP, I still thought Draymond was the most important guy because he unlocks that death lineup. I know yesterday afternoon he didn't get double figures in anything, but he dominated that basketball game. And the intensity that he brings, while I know it can be grating to the opponent, it lifts his teammates. And it makes his teammates better defensively as a whole. And so as long as he isn't just a negative, forget a zero, a negative on offense, he's so deadly for them, which is why that you just have to hold on. You just can't let go of the rope against that lineup, right? You just can't let them blow you out. That's what they did against New Orleans. They won that game in the first 8 minutes.
Yeah, they have so many shooters in the lineup, but the thing that lineup presents is you don't have to be hot. That's what was yesterday. Steph, he wasn't on fire. Klay was just normal, but KD. And that's what they have that no other team can have. Houston doesn't have that. We know LeBron. LeBron can't take 5 minutes off. We know what's going to happen to the Cavs. But that consistency that they always have one of the league's best scorer, I think that presents a lot of problems for the rest of the NBA.
No, it's incredible because you think about their playoffs this year. You know, Steph came off the bench after missing 2 or 3 months. Super hot that game. KD's been great all playoffs long. And you barely talk about Klay, and we know Klay can go off for 30 points in a quarter. Quietly. And Draymond Green sitting there getting triple-doubles left and right. So they're very hard to guard, very hard to defend. We're all looking forward to the next round and seeing them playing against Houston, but very tough to defend.
Steve Kerr's going with this lineup for Game 5. Do you see him doing this the rest of the way?
I could see that. I mean, why not? The way KD's playing defense, I think he was top 3 or 4 in block shots this year. Draymond being their anchor, emotional leader. I could definitely see, and then you also bring on, we're not even talking about Sean Livingston can guard 2 or 3 positions as well. They have a lot they can go with, but the difference is against Houston, Capella.
Yes.
I think JaVale McGee may play a part in that series to try to go off of Capella.
If you're going to play this lineup, if you're going to play against this lineup, pardon me, you have to dominate them on the glass.
Yes.
Like, that's where Capella, I know Anthony Davis is he's a much better player than Capella, but he's not as good a defender as Capella is, and he's not as good of a rebounder as Capella is. And go ahead, C.
Yeah, I don't think they can play that lineup against Houston because they do the high pick and roll. That's the way they start their offense, with a high pick and roll with Harden. And if you do that, if you put Draymond on him, you put KD on him, they're going to get alley-ooped on the whole time.
Right.
And Harden coming off of that, I don't think that's the most effective way. I think they need to go with the big.
The ball too, and the way CP passes to Capella as well. You saw that last night as well.
When it comes to Houston, the reality is, for the Warriors, when that 5-man unit's out there, there is some amount, and I know athletes would hate to hear this, but there's some amount of luck that has to come into it. You have to hope Iggy and Dre are off. Because if those guys they are going to get
I don't think that's luck.
No.
I mean, over the course of their career, they have shown times where they cannot shoot the basketball.
For sure. I meant luck in the opposite direction, meaning if they're on, that's unlucky, and then there's no solving it. If it's a game where Iggy and Dre are hitting their shots, because they are going to get wide open looks. If they're hitting them, Van Gundy says it on the broadcast all the time. You give Draymond that shot, and if he makes it, you lose. It shouldn't be that simple, but when you've got two guys in Steph and KD that will finish their careers as top 20 all-time guys, another no doubt Hall of Famer in Clay, all just as offensive guys. You only got 5 guys to defend. There's only so many answers you can try to solve out for.
Right, but the other great thing about those two guys, even when their shot's not going, they can get the rebound and push it themselves and create for other people because they're going to drive the ball to the basket, make you collapse. And if you don't collapse, obviously they got a layup or a dunk. But if you do collapse, they kick it out to 3 of the best shooters we've ever seen.
We waited so long, the last couple weeks of the regular season and the first playoff round to get this Warriors team healthy so that we could say the Warriors at their strongest. How do they match up against the Rockets at their strongest as well? And now it looks like those two are on a collision course to face each other. How do you like those two?
It's going to be a great series, I think. I think Houston's got more than what people think. Obviously, the Warriors are the champs, and they're incredible, and we love them as basketball fans. They're fun to watch. I think it goes 6 or 7. I got the Warriors coming out of it, especially with Steph being healthy now. But I'm interested to see how Houston does. Who do you guys got?
I'm going with Houston.
Okay.
I think Houston is the better team. I think what Golden State will bring out the best in Houston. I believe their ability to be able to close a couple different ways compared to just having Harden, having CP on the ball late in games, and having him be ball dominant.
And I know the storyline going into that series is going to be KD, Steph, Clay, James Harden, CP3. But the guy we mentioned earlier is a key. Clint Capella, who was playing the best 2-week stretch or 3-week stretch of basketball he's ever played. If you remember, Clint Capella's the guy KD took a shot at earlier this year when he said Capella's job's easy. Capella last night was the best player on the court for Houston. There's been a couple games this postseason where he's been their second leading scorer. He's got to be extraordinary. He's got to be an A+ in that series. Listen, 65 wins means something to me. Home court advantage means something to me. I've said Houston for the last few months. I'm not changing it, but man, oh man, the Warriors look terrifying.
I think also the number of bodies that they can throw at KD that New Orleans can't do.
Correct.
Right. Luke Richard Belamunte. We can throw him out just the way I threw his name out there, just like that. But the number of different bodies, the number of different bodies, 6'9" to 6'7" to 6'10", I believe that's the difference for Houston.
Let me just ask you one quick follow-up real quick before we advance in the next round. Game 5, New Orleans. Yeah. Would you ask Anthony Davis to guard KD?
I think it's going to be tough, man. I think KD has a lot of stuff on the offensive side. I mean, at this point, why not? Nothing else.
I mean, he guarded him a big portion of the second half of that game.
Why not?
What did that do? KD just put a little more arc on his jacket.
Absolutely.
All right, Carlos, we'll see you a little bit later on in the show. Coming up is LeBron's game in an all-time high. That's next on First Things First. I'm Jenna Wolf, and thank you for listening to the First Things First podcast. Make sure to subscribe and tell your friends, family, and coworkers about the podcast, which, by the way, is available on iTunes and all your favorite podcast apps. You can catch a fresh new episode every Monday through Friday on FS1, starting at 6:30 a.m. Eastern, 3:30 a.m. Pacific. So long.